everybody. I think there might be a little bit of a delay in what Pops is.
Are people going to join us on screen, or are we going to read the chat, or both?
I feel like we're going to mostly read the chat, but we can always add people on screen. Okay, hang on a minute.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to mute the actual video so that I wasn't hearing both of the older version and the newer version of ourselves. Okay, hi everybody. I'm Sarah. That's Tim.
Hi.
We are just trying to figure out all the logistics here of who is joining us and how we are going to take your questions today. So there is on the YouTube page on the sort of right column a little chat window. If you are in there and you can hear us, say hi. We are not in a Google Hangout this year because we wanted to be able to record this and send it out to the MLs who couldn't join us today, which is why this is a different setup than we used last year. Our current setup for Google Hangouts does not allow for recording meetings, and we knew that people were going to have questions and wanted to answer them, so we wanted to be able to send this out to everybody.
I think if people want to join on the screen, Sarah, is there like a little like invite person thing? There's like a link that we can send, we can put in the chat maybe?
Let me look.
Do you see what I'm talking about?
Is it in the Hangout toolbox?
No, so at the very top of your screen, there's like the little...
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so if anyone wants to join us on camera, I am popping the link into the chat window now. You don't necessarily have to do that right this minute, but later on when we get into the Q&A of the conversation, you can pop on then as well. And yes, this will be, if you jump on camera, you will be joining the YouTube stream.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how I can see the chat. Let's see.
Should have brought an intern on board with us to do this with the, YouTube competencies.
Could you ping me the link to this YouTube?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, y'all. Thanks for being patient with us. Cool. Thank you. All right. All right. That worked.
But mute the YouTube channel or the YouTube video so that you don't get the echo. Oh, we got a person. Anne.
Hi. Okay, I think Connect Click said I'm hard to hear, so I'll try to speak up a little bit. Definitely let me know if I'm talking too quietly. I think, as Sarah stated, we're going to just start with kind of a quick debrief about, or a quick update about like where things are standing with the redesign. And so I'll be giving you a little bit of an update. Sarah will chime in. And then after that, I think we're going to try to take some questions. Sarah got some questions from the forum thread too, right? That you're going to read off. Okay, cool. Awesome. So in terms of where we're at with the redesign, so we've been working on the redesign since last year. As you all know, we worked with an agency called Studio Simpatico to do kind of the UI and the visual design for the website, and they delivered really awesome work. We were super excited about it. And then since the beginning of this year, basically in February, Dave and Jezra, who are our tech team, our mighty tech team of two, have been working really hard to try to build what Studio Simpatico delivered to us. And so there's a couple of things that are making this process a little complicated. One is that we decided to go with a whole new framework for the website. So Dave and Jez, when they were kind of exploring what was going to set us up the best for the future and give us a really solid foundation to have a website that's going to be easy to maintain, easy to update, easy to iterate on into the future, was that if we moved to a framework called Ember. So those were all of the pros of moving to Ember. The difficulties, the challenges of moving to Ember were that it was a brand new platform to us. And so Dave and Jezra were learning as they went. And so we also ended up investing some money in working with a couple of Ember developers who are really well versed in that framework to kind of train Dave and Jezra as they went, and then also help them build the website. And so it's been Dave, who is our tech director, is really confident that that was the right choice for us. And it was going to, again, put NaNoWriMo on good footing for a really robust site for many years into the future. But it's also been a little bit more of a learning curve than I think he anticipated. And so it's been hiccups here and there. Initially, our timeline was that we wanted to have a beta site ready for all y'all, the MLs, and for certain other folks in August, and that's not looking likely at this point. And then the other thing that's not looking likely is our original timeline was that we were going to try to launch this version of the site in September. So on September 6th, we were going to introduce this new site, and then that way we have a long lead up of time before November actually hit to kind of let this traffic increase slowly, and then also kind of test out any bugs and see what's working, what's not working, etc. At this point, because of the pace of development, Dave and Jezra are at this point working alone, and our contract with the other Ember developers has lapsed. And so because of the pace of development, September 6th is no longer likely. And at this point, there are two scenarios on the table that we're discussing. So one is that we might try to push forward, and really, depending on just like on some of your feedback, and then also depending on what we hear from the road trip donors and other longtime participants, we might try to push forward for a launch in October. So October 1st, which is the first Monday. Or the other scenario, what we're calling scenario C, I think, is that we run NaNoWriMo as is this year in 2018, and then we launch kind of like a preview site. So it wouldn't be like this would not be a version of the site where you would actually like track your novel this year or anything like that, but it's a version of the site where road trip donors, MLs, other longtime participants can get a preview of kind of what some of the features and functions will be. And then we would launch in January to the public. So January 7th, I believe, which is the first Monday of January. Lots of pros and cons all around, I think October obviously is really close to November, and it doesn't give either staff or MLs a ton of time to really get used to the new site. But I mean, the pros of October are obviously just that we promised a new site to many donors this year, and it's not a great feeling to walk back on that promise. And then the other thing is just that it would be an opportunity to actually test the site under the full load of November if we launched it this year. And if we launch in January, obviously we have more time for development, more time for people to test, and more time for people to adjust and get comfortable. But also we wouldn't really be able to kind of see the site performing at peak loads until November 2019, which is a long time away. So those are just a few of the pros and cons. Obviously we've been discussing a lot of stuff internally, and I know you guys probably have strong thoughts. So at this point, open to both questions, feedback, opinions, fun facts.
I can see Cannot Click there commenting on past events where we've had October launches, and that's definitely been front of mind as we are talking through all the different options available to us here. I think the one that sticks in my mind the most is the year that we didn't have regional messages for like the first 3 weeks of October. And that's definitely been front of mind as we kind of weigh the pros and cons on all these lists. Is like, what is this experience going to be like for participants is obviously a factor, but like, what is option? We're calling them scenario B and scenario C, even though scenario A is off the table, which is kind of confusing. But like, what are the pros and cons between those two for what the kind of experience our volunteers and our kind of core participants and donors are going to have? So that's definitely been a significant factor in the discussion. Like, we have been listening to the feedback that we've been getting from MLs, particularly in part because you're more involved in kind of the ongoing conversation, especially the thread about discourse and all of the various feedback we've had over the months of the redesign. That's definitely been front of mind, but also because, as Tim said, October is very close to November, and that does not give us a lot of time for not only your training, but also the longer lead time we have on our end, the more time we have to prepare those training materials for MLs, and it all is just kind of an ongoing cycle of what makes the most sense and what is going to be the best experience for participants.
Yeah, I think, like Sarah said, like there's just been, I mean, we've done things like this in the past, for better or worse. And, you know, when we launched the redesign of the YWP site, that was launched in October. And I know that, you know, it's always, there are ups and downs, right? I mean, one is that we're keeping again, like I said, like the ups are that we're keeping our word about when we're going to launch, but the downs are obviously that the time frame just gets squished AF. So
that's the technical term for it.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm just seeing everybody's comments are kind of, not that there's a ton of them here, but you all seem to be sort of quickly grasping the implications of scenario B. Are there people who have strong concerns or comments they want to make about scenario C, where we push site launch to January?
Yes, please, but I don't know if my mic is working.
It is. Hi.
Oh, good. Howdy.
Mysterious J.
It's Iron Angel Forge from Muskegon Nano up in Michigan.
Hi.
I want to suggest that we strongly go with C for the simple reason that we have the U.S. election coming up, which is going to be chaotic for our people, and a lot of our people are going to use Nano as an escape. And to try and go into a new site is going to be somewhat uncomfortable for a lot of people. So it just seems to me like, from both a donation standpoint and a corporate standpoint, we're safer off staying with something they're familiar with, in that they can continue on comfortably in a I hate to use the word safe space, but that's probably the easiest way to explain it. And then that also sets us up for some really good fundraising potential, as in updates showing, here's what you're doing for us, you know, this month. Your donations have allowed us to build this thing, and so on. Plus, it also ties in really, really well with the 20th anniversary of Nano. So you've basically got this whole, you know, a new Nano for a new decade kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah.
One of the things, sorry, Tim, do you want to, one of the things that I feel like, I don't want to speak for Dave, but one thing that he said when we had this meeting last week, when we were discussing sort of the various scenarios and what we think the likely outcome is going to be, is that one of the reasons that he's so hesitant to like just call it and say, let's do it in January, is that the new site features and tools and structures are so great that he hates the idea of making people wait for them. And that's a huge part of it for me too, especially with MLs, because like I've seen what some of those tools are going to look like and what they're going to do for your experience and how you can manage your regions and reach out to participants. And it's so hard to like, and Catherine was asking me a question today about how do we do this for MLs? And I was like, oh, it's a super kludgy workaround. Here's how you do it. Sorry, it's kind of crappy. And I was like, oh, that's supposed to be fixed this year. And it's tough. And I think that's where Dave's hesitation is, that he's like, oh, I'm building all this new stuff and it's so good. But it's hard to be like, sorry, this good stuff has to be. So I think that it's not that we want to rush and have a subpar product launch. It's just that it is so much of what MLs especially have been asking for so long is built into the new site. And it's hard to say, well, you just have to wait another year.
I totally get that. Totally.
Yeah.
But my concern there is also, only a month to learn while we're doing all the prep work and run up. That's pretty frightening for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, totally frankly, like we're kind of like I might have presented it as like, oh, we're trying to decide between the two, but oh, John left. Okay, well, maybe you'll come back.
He's probably still listening too.
Okay, cool. I was gonna say, to be totally honest, like at this point, given just kind of how much more we have to do, and I talked with Dave and Jezra this morning, it's just given our limitations and the resources of time and manpower that we have, I would say that it's much more likely that we're going to go with scenario C than with scenario B, just because of the fact that like Dave and Jess just needed the more time they have, the more better product they'll be able to deliver at the end. And so I can't say 100% yes, we're definitely going to launch in January instead. But if I was putting a bet on whether we're going to launch in October or January, I would bet on January. And so all that said, I think, totally hear you guys. I think kind of the overwhelming consensus from y'all seems to be that like y'all would prefer January anyway, which is fantastic and great to hear. And so, it's very likely that that is what is going to happen. I think
and I think it's worth mentioning too that like I think we all went into that meeting last week where the staff all went in thinking, oh, we want scenario B. Scenario C is not an option. Then we all sort of like talked in a circle and realized that we all sort of came to the conclusion that scenario C might be the best choice, even if it's not our preferred choice. And I think that seems to be like the point that you're all reaching probably much faster than we did here in the chat window, is just that you're seeing that like that time frame is just not workable, or not that it's not workable, but it's really challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously the conversation, we're not just talking in circles to talk in circles. Like the conversation, we're weighing a lot of different factors, right? I mean, it's obviously a major consideration is how MLs will get adjusted to the site, and Sarah surfaced that a lot in that meeting. I think the other consideration we're balancing is just the fact that like we've never not delivered a site on the timeline that we promised before. So it's a big step. It's a big deal. It's not a small thing that we would be doing because we did. I mean, I think John, you were mentioning just like the possibility of spurring donations by saying, hey, look what you're building, look what you're helping to build. But the reality is that we ran 2 pretty significant fundraising campaigns to raise money for this site based on the promise that we were going to deliver it in 2018. And so the hesitation is not just about like staff members being like, oh, we really prefer to launch it in September, like this year. The hesitation is that we made a promise to a bunch of donors, and a bunch of donors donated on the belief that they would be getting a new site in 2018. And so it's a major consideration on the staff end. Like we have to take that seriously, and we have to think about the fact that what can we do to kind of really make sure that we are communicating with those donors properly, that we are letting them know why this is happening, that we are managing kind of their expectations, because it's like I said, we've never not been able to deliver a site on the timeline that we promised before.
And I think it's not only just donors who donated to those fundraising drives in the past, but it's also potential donors who are like, well, you didn't follow through on the last thing you collected donations for, so why should I donate now too? Like that's a factor in this year's fundraising as well, I think. So that's I don't want to suggest that our conversation was like, well, what did the MLs think? And that's the end of it. Like it was obviously a complex conversation that's got a lot of factors in it.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time.
I was reading as well. I think comments from y'all, I really appreciate you guys helping us kind of start to brainstorm some ways to kind of manage that communications. I think these are great. I think y'all are right. I mean, like we want to take that burden seriously, of the fact that we made this promise and that we might not be able to keep it. But I think what you guys are saying about just being really clear, that most RIMOs are reasonable people, that they won't, like really like hold a burning grudge against us. I think y'all are right about that. And so I think in the end, what we want to do is we want to deliver a site that just really works the way that we promised that it will work. I think that's probably the the more major promise that we want to make sure to keep. And I think in order to keep that, we might have to kind of back down on our initial timeline.
Yeah, because I was very concerned about this year's theme being so open-ended. I didn't want to see the hashtag NaNoWriMo is broken to be the top trend. You know, that was my huge, oh, geez, this could really be bad.
Yeah, that would suck.
Or NaNoWriMo is down. That would not be good.
Oh, it would totally be NaNoWriMo is down would be the hashtag. I can hear Twitter now.
It's happened before. We did our flashback drive. We'd just be like, oh, we're extending the flashback. Remember when NaNoWriMo used to be down?
In my day, we didn't have access to NaNoWriMo for the entire first week of October, and we wore socks, you know.
I'm not sure people are ready for that.
NaNoWriMo. To the question earlier, to show you how it will work and some of the new features, so we can get familiarized to them before January launch and we can get prepared. One of the big advantages to that January launch is that it does just give us more time for getting, like I think Tim mentioned earlier that in this scenario C, there would be sort of a functioning beta testing version of the site that MLs and donors and some other sort of power users, much though I kind of hate that phrase, would have access to sort of get the hang of it and learn what's working, and also be testing the site and working with us to kind of improve it and get it to be a more finalized version of the site. And the trick with this whole 20th anniversary thing is it's not like we're launching it in November or in September of 2019. So it wouldn't exactly be like an anniversary launch. I guess we could tie it into like an anniversary year. But I think that you're all thinking in the direction that is the same conclusion that we came to, that we can, it's strongly going to be based on sort of the messaging approach that we take to it. And I think that having MLs on our side, as you clearly always are and are again here, is going to be really helpful on that front in terms of getting the kind of just having the right attitude about this decision and going into it with like, we just want to make sure that this is a really great experience for everyone. And we don't want it to be a broken site for the first 2 weeks of November, because that's not the great experience that people donated for either.
Totally.
Can I just say something? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, you know, with all the best will in the world, you made some promises and you meant to keep those promises. But if it turns out you can't keep those promises, then the easiest, the sensible way forward is to say, hey guys, it hasn't quite worked out as we planned. Things are harder than we thought. We are concerned about getting this done in time and giving everyone a chance to get to know the new site and so on. And just fess up. I mean, basically, if it's not going to happen in time, and I've had this same situation with things that I'm delivering. I had great plans to do things like a year ago, and actually, you know, life gets in the way. As you say, not enough manpower, things go wrong, whatever. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter why. If it's not going to happen with 100% certainty, with plenty of space to breathe, the best way forward is to say it's not going to happen, and we're going to take some time out, and we're going to make sure that when it does launch, it's actually fantastic. Because if you years and years and years ago, I'm talking half a century ago, I was working for a software house, and we only released software when it actually worked. Now this beta testing nonsense, we did the beta testing in-house, and we weren't allowed to sell anything to a client unless it actually worked. Nowadays, people release software before it actually works. But to be honest with you, if you release a site that doesn't work, I actually haven't got time to go through and tell you what's not working. I mean, I will obviously pull my weight and I'll do my best, and if I find something, I'll let you know. But I would be far happier if you made sure that it was working as far as you knew. And then if there were some little things, obviously we're going to find out and we're going to tell you. But I don't want big things that you go, oh yeah, well that whole bit doesn't work actually because we ran out of time. You know, I'd far rather you said right now it's not going to happen until January or March, or you know, it's the same with the builders. We've got builders doing the back garden. It should have been finished Christmas before last. You know what? But you know, if you're honest up front, people will respect you and understand. And even if it's donors that you've made promises to, I'm sure an email to all your donors that simply says, hey guys, we had massive aspirations. Thank you for your support. But actually, we're having to move the goalpost. I'm sure they'll be understanding.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's really wise. And that definitely is kind of the approach that we're hoping to take. I think in terms of just like immediate timeline, what's happening next, when we're going to kind of make these final decisions. So we left that meeting last week, kind of agreeing that scenario C probably seemed the most likely. And so I think we're waiting until the first week of August to kind of just really take the temperature and see how Dave and Jezra are progressing in terms of their development. And then from there, just make the final call, the final call. Like I said, I would place a big bet on the fact that it will be January.
I might be, if I may, Tim, I might be a terrible person, but roll it out on December 31st. We got it in 2018.
That's hilarious. It's a smart idea.
11:59 p.m.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, I think I saw Lily Montgomery say that in the chat too, if we launched it during December or something like that. Yeah, I think that could definitely be something that we could discuss as well. I think the reason we thought about January was just because December, post-November tends to be a little tough in staff land, I will say. And then the holidays in December that many people celebrate, we just thought that it'd be a little bit interrupted. But I think if we start to get some real, like once we start these communications with the donors and participants and with, even more MLs, like if we start to get a lot of pushback from people who are like, how dare you not launch in 2018, then I think December 31, here we go.
And I think like Alindra's making this point there that like we are all familiar with like at the end of a month of MLing, well, not even a month, but at the end of the main month of MLing in December, if someone was like, great job on this massive project, here is the next even larger project let's go. Like it's not the best, people aren't in the best mindset, I think, in December for like, let's quickly jump into another big project. And I think it's also if we stay on the existing site for November, like there is going to have to be the occasional tech intervention on anything that goes wrong there. So it's not like they're going to be able to be 100% new site 24/7 all of November, because we all know that things happen. And so they're not going to be able to be totally focused. And the advantage of doing that in January is that then they have a bit of time in December to sort of refocus on the new site, and the staff have time to sort of refocus that and get all of the prep materials.
But definitely let us know if you start to hear, like, as we kind of move forward with this messaging and communications, if you start to hear people who are like really upset about the fact that we're not launching in 2018. I mean, we'll hear a lot of that feedback as well, but it'd be great to hear if you guys hear stuff. Yeah, because then I think we can adjust as necessary. But I think January is looking the most likely for when we would launch. And then
now is a question there? Is that also inclusive of the same forums, or are we going to move to the new forums this year?
No, that would include the new forums, would then also roll out in January. Oh no.
He's got a spotty connection.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the thing that we have to remember in this conversation in the chat about, the neglected tech gremlins who love to complain, is that scenario B or scenario C, it's probably going to annoy people, whichever one we choose. It's just going to be different people that are annoyed.
And the scale of annoyance will be different.
And I agree with Marinda too, that like the open communication is what will make the biggest difference for sure. And that's partly why we're like here now talking to you, because we made that decision and we were like, okay, great, let's start by talking to the MLs about it and then kind of moving on from there.
Cool. If y'all have any other additional thoughts or questions about kind of timeline, when we're going to launch, let us know either by hopping on video or in the chat. I think, Sarah, you had some questions, and then I know that there was some conversation about discourse specifically, so maybe we could talk a little bit about that too.
That's a great idea. So why don't we If people have questions, drop them into the chat. While you're doing that, we'll go over and answer the questions from the forums. And then we can loop back around to the chat questions after that. And if anyone wants to hop on camera, you can do so. And I will drop that link in again once I'm finished reading forum questions. I have too many tabs open. So the first question is about more specifics about the actual new site rather than the timelines. Tim, I don't know if you want to dip into that well for a while here.
Yeah, sure. So I can talk a little bit about the new site. I think I forget if it was John or someone else who was asking about about screenshots and stuff like that. I think, Sarah, you're going to send maybe some screenshots in an email.
Yeah, I think that's easier than trying to set up screen sharing right now. So I'm planning to send a follow-up email with the link to these recordings either later this week or early next week once we're finished with the office hours. And then we'll include some of the screenshots of what the new site's going to look like in that email as well.
We'll definitely include some screenshots in the email. If y'all really want to see some screen sharing right now, maybe just give like I don't know, just say like a +1 in the chat or something, and I can go figure that out while maybe Sarah fields some questions in the chat. Otherwise, so yeah, I think in terms of the stuff that we're building for the site itself, some of y'all might have, we did like a bunch of interviews with users, participants, MLs, people who've heard of NaNoWriMo but haven't actually done it, just to kind of get a sense of like what the feelings were out there as we were trying to develop what the site features were going to be. And so it's a lot of the stuff that just, you know, obviously makes NaNoWriMo what NaNoWriMo is all about. So like a lot of the progress tracking, the goal, like the stats, the region management and stuff like that. I think the things that I'm the most excited about are a few things. So one, I think people said they really love our stats. And so we just really went frigging all out on the stats. We just have a really robust goal dashboard, kind of letting you see, in addition to kind of the usual stats that we've shown you with the graph and like the progress bars, and then kind of like, you know, like how many days until you'll finish, things like that. We've also added like a bunch of other different stats to kind of just give you a sense of what your like writing style is, or like your writing pace and things like that. It's really cool. I'm super excited about that. I think we're also giving people the ability to kind of like, if you want to, if competition is something that spurs you on, you can compare your progress to like your progress in 2017 or your progress in 2016, or like select the year that you were the fastest in, and then kind of like compare that year's progress to your fastest year's progress. If you're really into competing with other people, we'll also allow you to kind of like do that. If you have a buddy that you're just gonna help you to motivate yourself, you can compare your progress that way.
The buddies overhaul is one of the best parts of the new site, because basically buddies as they stand now are fairly useless. It's basically a bookmark system, and the new buddies setup is just going to be like actual functional relationships on the site in ways that are really motivating, and you can compete with your buddies if that's what you're into, or you can encourage your buddies if that's what you're into, or you could both. And you can just really use the site in a meaningful way to engage with other writers in a way that it currently just does not allow.
Yeah, totally. And then speaking specifically about like regions and ML stuff, Sarah can jump in here too. But I think the region home pages look really cool now. I think a couple of things. So one is that we are hoping to introduce an event system that is not tied to Google Calendar. So basically where you can kind of like, you know, create events and create a more robust calendar on the site itself to let people know about events. And then we're also going to allow people who are in your region to RSVP to events so that you can kind of get a better sense of like who's interested. Sorry, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, I was actually going to say people did sound like they were interested in some screenshots now, and I actually feel like you should go pull up the.
Okay. You talk about
that is the screenshot you should pull up, because I feel when I saw the page that was like an event for an ML that's hosting an event, and all of the tools and resources they had there, I was like, oh man, MLs are going to lose it over this. It's so good. It's so good. It's everything I ever wanted when I was an ML. So it's that's a huge part of the change. Is that one of the questions in the forum that we got is, will the forums be set up the same way, and will the ML functions work the same way? And the thing that I think requires a real mindset shift is how much it's changed how MLs are going to work and run events, because it's all integrated. It's integrated into the site. So you can put in the information about your event and, you know, the location, and people can RSVP, and people can like arrange carpools within the event, and people can see which of their buddies are going to an event. And if they want to, you know, send a message to their buddy from the event where they've both RSVP'd, they can do that. And I can see Alindra asking about whether Buddies is going to be one-sided. And no, that's part of what's changing, is that the whole process of buddying right now is not robust in any way. That sort of prevents like the creepiness factor. And that's a huge part of what we're changing with this new structure. And so it's all going to be integrated in a way that is just like so much more usable and functional. And, you know, we haven't got it all built and finalized yet, but everything that Dave says about it, he says that like the events is one of the things he's most excited about. And just so much more function for MLs, for people to RSVP, you know, how many people to expect. And then also the other thing that's going to make a huge difference for is Come Right In integration, that your Come Right In spaces in your region can sign up for an account. They can submit their events in the events database. It'll, you know, mark that it's a Come Right In event. And it'll just be integrated, and you'll be notified when there's a new Come Right In space that puts up an event in your region, and you're not, you know, it just gives you a way more functional way to work with other events and other people in your region that are kind of excited, but don't have necessarily the information that MLs have. Yeah, and that's just it. Like right now, you're updating it on Google Calendar, you're putting it in a forum thread, you're maybe adding an event on Facebook. It's kind of everywhere, and this is just going to kind of integrate everything in a way that's really user-friendly, I hope, and also like back-end friendly as well. Oh no, now Tim is screen sharing my face.
Oh, sorry. Okay, cool. So I think you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So screen sharing some stuff. Let me go into region pages.
Well, Tim's doing that. It sounds like that's a really good way to get people to stay on the site more as well.
Exactly. Yeah, because we feel like we're shoving people off the site all the time because it's easier to have these tools elsewhere. And one of the other things that's really great about the new site is how much more mobile friendly it is. So it's so much easier to like jump onto the site, grab the event information, and like click the link in the event that'll skip you to Google Maps, like integrated, rather than being like, I'm just going to go check on the Facebook event because that's easier.
That was a very big question I had as well.
Cool.
Yeah, no, the mobile integration was definitely like everything has like a mobile view. When our like the third-party redesign organization that we worked with, Simpatico, every screen that we saw that was like, here's what it's going to look like, had a desktop and a mobile version.
Cool. So I'm going to pin this. So this is kind of the region. The region page that we're looking at. This is the kind of like the landing page for your personal region. So Studio Simpatico featured New York City because that's where they're based. So you'll have kind of like a cover photo here that MLs can manipulate. You can put whatever you want here. And then of course your regional stats will be along the top here as well. You'll put a description of your region here. And then the kind of like, social media links or anything that you want to put here. We're discussing having this kind of messaging space on the front page. So there'll be a link out to the regional forum as well, but there'll also be this messaging space that functions a little bit more like.
It's almost like the messages now on the, like in the, I can't remember what they're called on a regional forum right now, but there's that little spot for like a alert or whatever on the page right now, but this can also function as that.
Yeah.
Sadly, it's showing us Tim talking, not the page. I can see it in a really miniature window.
Just a minute. Let me...
If you have control of that.
Let me see if I can... I said present to everyone. Did that...
There it is.
Nope. That's Tim's email.
Here we go.
Oh, hey. Neat.
Did that work? Can you see it now?
That's the one, and it looks fantastic.
And you can see over there on the left is like the Nano Message region. So that's another thing that's totally overhauled with the new site is Nano Messages, or Nano Mail is becoming Nano Messaging. And so you can see I'm swinging my mouse around it like you can see me doing that, which you can't. But that's one of the questions that we had on the forum is like, how will Nano, like regional messages work? And it's that easy. You click it, there's the message. And then Tim, are you going to hop over to the events page? So this you can see in the middle there. Yeah, there's tabs. So there's the overview one, and then Tim is hopping over to the events one here. And so this is where New York Public Library has submitted these events that they're hosting, and then you'll just have this screen. You can see there's, again, tabs here, upcoming, past, and pending. So the pending ones are ones that a user has submitted that you can take a look at and see. Pretty much we figure you'll be rejecting them if it's like, come right in my basement. But generally it's just like, or if you have a problem with a user that's causing trouble in the past, you can reject them. But this will just be like, oh, great, there's a come right in session. They're signed up. Here it is. Done.
Wait, we're not having a write-in at the free candy van this year?
And then, yeah, so this is the actual happening or upcoming events here. You can see if you scroll down, and then this is an actual event page. So on November 20th, New York Public Library writing session, you can see the little chat window there is where you could be like, hey, can anyone give me a ride to this write-in? My car broke down. Down below is where the RSVP information is, the location, the map information. And then you can do the I'm interested, and then that will add you to the attending list, and then you can add it to your calendar as well on the drop-down there. So each individual event that you set up on your region will have this page. People can ask their questions there. You can arrange who's ordering pizza in the little chat, whatever you need to do to have like conversations within, but it's all integrated into one place on the site instead of hopping between a forum thread, a Facebook event, a Google Calendar post, a Google Map for where it is, whatever. It's all integrated into this one space.
Yeah, and then the event submission, basically anyone who's a member of your region can submit an event. They'll fill out all the information, and then you'll be able to click into it. And then, like Sarah said, you see this kind of approve, reject little bar here. You'll get a notification that there's an event for your approval. You can go look at it, and then you can say approve or reject. If you reject it, you'll be able to kind of add a little note about why you rejected it if you want to. And then it'll also just, give all admin users just a heads up that the event's been rejected, just so we can keep track. And yeah.
And then if you're having problems with a user or anything like that, then we'll have a record to kind of go back on that someone's abusing the system.
And then I think the kind of last little tab for the region page is, this is an ML view only. So it's just a list of members in your region.
You can see up in the top right there, there's the edit welcome message where you can have an automated welcome message that anytime someone joins your region, they get the automated welcome message.
Yeah.
So you can be like, come do these 5 things that everybody in our region loves to do. And I'm glad to, every time I look at this events page, I'm like, I can't wait to show this to MLs. So I'm very happy that we get to show you some of this today.
This is really pretty fantastic, and I would suggest now that you've got the screen share to work, if you guys have got some extra time around the office, to do a actual Nano video showing the new features and put it up on the Nano YouTube channel so people see what's coming, because it'll get them really excited,
Yeah, and especially if we end up in scenario C, I think there's going to be a lot of we'll probably have a lot of prep involved around the communication strategy for how to build excitement without getting people too excited too early, and then they are over it by the time the site actually launches.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely good for the donators though to see what they've helped build, and that encourages people to keep going.
Yeah.
Built by the way PBS does it, built by people like you.
I love it. Cool. Yeah. Are we good with the screen share? Should I end it?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else in there. I haven't looked at these in a couple of weeks, and I can't remember if there's anything else that we should. I feel like those were the ones that I really wanted to show people.
I can show you the goal dashboard. That was the thing that I was talking about a little bit earlier with the more robust stats, which I'm pretty excited about. So this is what that looks like. You'll have kind of, you can pick the project that you're working on up here, the specific goal you're working on, obviously, and then it shows you your total word count, how many words you need to write today to stay on time, your streak, and then these three kind of top level stats you can change to show kind of whatever you want. So if you'd rather see like, oh, how many at this rate I'll finish on or whatever, you can switch that out. This is your usual kind of like well, we have two kind of overall progress charts. So we have these two here. We're introducing milestones, hopefully. So then, like basically, like if you're writing 50,000 words, but then you know that like you're in November, but you know that like you're going to be really busy that third week of November, you can say like, oh, I want to actually reach 30,000 by November 15th or whatever. You can set those mini milestones here as well. And then this is also where like you're comparing your pace against like your previous pace. And then these are kind of just like other little fun things that that we're hoping to be able to tell you, like, like you write the most between 7 and 8 p.m. You're a night owl.
And one of the ways that we're pulling those stats is that we have more robust tools for logging your writing sessions. So you can like start and end a writing session and like track all that information on the site. And I know that for literally as long as I have been doing NaNoWriMo, which is 17 years, 16 years this year, people have had like the super fancy Excel spreadsheets and stuff like that where they can track most of that. And we're just trying to like integrate all of that again so that we're bringing people back to the site instead of pushing them out elsewhere. So you can track what your writing sessions are, how many words you wrote during the writing session, where you wrote them, what your mood was while you were writing them. Like, and there's all these little sort of badges and like the gamification aspect is there as well as the tracking. So it's kind of the combination of two of the things that have been most effective for people to kind of keep them motivated, both to keep writing and also to keep coming back to the site and keep engaging. And then, with the new events tools combined with this, if people are really motivated to keep coming back and entering their writing sessions, then they're also going to keep getting notified about events near them because that's all integrated into the site now. So they can be like, oh, that's cool. There's a write-in happening at the library now down the street. And everything is just, and that's part of what Dave said is so challenging with this site build is that it's all so integrated. And I think I said this in the discourse thread, is that it's not a case of being able to be like, great, this completely independent section of the site is finished and now you can look at it, because everything is so tied in with the other parts of it that it's all going to be a really robust sort of intersectional site where one part of it kind of feeds off another part of it. And you can see Tim's scrolling through the we came up with the phrase midday flamingo because we were like, okay, so people who write early in the morning are going to be early birds. People who write at the end of the day are going to be the night owls. And then we're like, what are people who write in the middle of the day going to be? And we settled on midday flamingos. And so, yeah, it's just sort of all of that information, and it is that combination of statistics and gamification that people really respond well to, but that's also integrated into the regions and their experience that way.
Here's an interesting observation for you. Looking at this is going to get people on the site year round more. I think would it be possible?
That is on purpose.
Well, good. Would it be possible to have these tools available in other months as well?
Yeah, that's actually the intention. So I think when we were kind of starting this rebuild process, we're like, well, we could redesign the site to work really, really well in the NaNoWriMo season from September through December. Or we could kind of, start a redesign that's going to work really, really well in September through December, but also work really well year round. And so I think that that was kind of like the second intention behind this redesign, is that it is going to be something all of these tracking tools, all of these project tools, they'll be available year round. There are certain things that will remain special for November and for NaNoWriMo. So for example, we're still gonna kind of make the suggested structure 50,000 words in the 30 days of November. And then you'll get specific badges for participating in NaNoWriMo. You'll get all of the winter stuff, which you won't get the full spectrum of if you're doing your own independent project. But all of these tools, hopefully, yes, will be fully available year round. All of the ML tools will be available year round. I know there are not an insignificant number of MLs who are doing a lot of writing events year round as well. And so if you want to hopefully if you're doing that, like this will make your management of all of that much easier. And then I also think Nanadez, somebody, is that who it was? Nanadez asked asked about the selection tool. If you can have multiple projects and goals, you can definitely have multiple projects and goals. So you can be working on more than one thing at a time. I think one thing we're discussing is for November, disallowing that, just because we want to kind of keep the intent of the event pure. But that's a conversation, open to your feedback there as well.
So there's a couple more questions here. One of the questions I'm sure has not been typed yet, but that people are already thinking is, will year-round MLing be required? And that's obviously a conversation that we'll have a longer one about later. It's not going to be required that you do your November level of involvement year-round, is the short answer to that. As for, is there talk of combining the Nano with Camp? What this is going to do is basically fold the structure of Camp into the main site. So we'll still have a lot of the same structure of Camp, but it will all be based out of the main website. Isn't MLing a year-round thing already? For a lot of people it is, but it's not required to be. And oh my God, you went into like a weird vortex thing there, Tim. Yeah, so it's basically giving people, it's basically giving people the option and the structure and the tools for their year-round events that are already happening. We're just catching up to where the MLs already are and making the site more useful for that kind of format. And then the white. Actually, Tim, we haven't talked about the white.
The white will still, we don't know yet, basically. So, y'all know our usual rhythm is that, like, the NaNoWriMo.org site basically, even though there's still some activity, it kind of goes into a sort of hibernation after December, and then really wakes up again in September. And so that's part of the reason why we do the wipe, just to kind of refresh the site for all of the new incoming people. And we wipe the forums. I don't know if we're still going to be doing that, just because of the fact that, or at least doing it on the same timetable we've been doing it on, just because of the fact that, yeah, like we're hoping to have a more year-round rhythm to the website. And it's also going to be the same, like Sarah said, we're integrating Camp into this one website as well. And so short, immediate answer, I don't know. I don't know if we're still going to be doing a wipe.
Can you speak to cabins for Camp as well, Tim?
Yeah, so cabins, we're gonna do some sort of group related feature so that you can create a writing group of your own. It's not gonna look like cabins as they currently are, which is for the better, I think. I think we're hoping to make them more robust. But that's something that's kind of we're really focused on launching the experience for, like, on V1 of the site, which is really focused on kind of like these features that we were talking about. And the cabin features are going to be in kind of a V2, a version 2, basically. But we'll have something like that for April, once April rolls around.
Speaking to this, there are currently 28,637 users online. It is Camp right now, so that's a big part of why there's so many people on the site now. And also, more and more as the years go on, the off season is less of a thing than it used to be, just because we have been working so hard to have more kind of robust content and features and engagement year round. And that's kind of what we've been working towards, is this more year round model as it happened naturally anyway. The site is just reflecting that, I think.
Totally. Nana just asked if translations will be available. Not with launch, to be honest. We just don't have kind of the resources right now to really make translations feasible. But that said, it's a big part of, like, the program strategy for the next, few years. A big part of that is talking about just like opening up NaNoWriMo, making sure that it's as accessible as possible, and a lot of that includes translations and making sure that we're making NaNoWriMo more accessible internationally. So if you have language suggestions, let us know. I think we have a list of a few that we know that we want to try to prioritize when we have the resources in the next few years.
Another thing that we've focused on with this rebuild is we worked with an accessibility firm to help make the site more accessible to various, use cases. We had them working with how the site was going to look on screen readers and various sort of like it's a specific company that's focused on accessibility of websites. So that is one area where we have done a lot to try to improve on the current site.
Yeah. It's going to be a learning curve for sure. Like I can't, like that's totally true. We did really prioritize accessibility for all types of users. But there will be room for improvement as well.
Yeah, I don't want to suggest that we have a perfectly created site, but it is something that we have tried to factor in.
Definitely.
We have had, in the past, we actually had translated versions done by volunteers, and it's a significant project, and it's one that we is definitely on the table as an option going forward as we look at how that's going to work.
Yeah, we did do that for, when was that, Sarah? Was it like 2010?
Years ago. 2010 might have been the last year we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how that has changed over the years. One of the reasons that it got deprioritized a little bit is because Google Translate got so much better. So as that time goes along and like the technology changes on that too, like it's hard for us to keep up with what's available. And so I think once we start tackling that, once the first version of the site is done and we start looking into that, there will definitely be a lot of options available. YWP will not heavily be affected by this because their site is totally separate. And yeah, Google Translate is definitely not perfect. I don't want to suggest that Google Translate is creating these flawless translations of exactly what's going on the site, but it was, it's an interim solution. And then should ML sign up for the YWP? The Young Writers Program site is intended to be for educators and students under 18. So ML shouldn't necessarily be signing up for the YWP directly, but we will definitely be promoting ways for you to work with YWP students in your region. And we are launching a YWP committee to do more of that this year.
Cool. Any other questions? I think we're kind of coming up on time. Were there other questions from the forums that we needed to surface, Sarah?
Let me just run over those quickly. Well, the regional forums we set up in the same way, kind of covered that. Not using Google Calendar, distribute regional goodies, prep materials, etc. I mean, the regional messaging will be there. I don't know about how that will be with like hosting regional prep materials and the like. That is a question that I'm going to punt to later. Sprint timers on the site. The new site does have word sprint features that are being worked on. Tim, do you want to speak any further about word sprints?
Word sprints is fully designed. We're planning on launching them depending on kind of, again, the pace of development. They may or may not launch with V1. So I'm hoping that, if we launch in January, it's much more likely that word sprints will launch with V1. If we launch in October, it's less likely that word sprints are included in version 1 of the site.
Will validation work the same way?
Yes.
And then when will everybody else get access, and what are there going to be announcements to participants before the launch, and when will that be? When can we officially tell everyone about it? That's a good question to end on. When can we talk about this? What can we tell people?
So everything we've talked about right now and all the stuff that we've showed you, I would definitely encourage y'all to kind of keep under your hat for now. We're not totally ready to roll with any of the information that we've kind of discussed together. We'll let you guys know when we have like firm messaging planned. We'll definitely be sending out some sort of update in August.
Yeah, and I think like we're having another one of these office hours on Friday, and then once that's done and we have the recordings to send out, I'll be sending the recordings and the screenshots and kind of an update email out to all of the MLs, and then like 2 weeks from now, I think is basically the timeline on like that sort of inflection point Tim talked about, where we're kind of making the final decision about B versus C scenarios. Will be in 2 weeks, and then once we know that, will obviously tell you.
I saw Iron Angel for you were saying that you wanted to tell the Rymos it's cool. You can tell them it's cool.
Only praise of Tim is acceptable.
Well, I didn't want to tell him without the official word, but it's like, yeah, it's worth waiting for. Trust me,
Cool. Awesome.
I feel like saying that, we're keeping the MLs in the loop, and that what you've seen is really awesome is not going to interfere with existing messaging plans.
Is that
official?
I'm actually super glad that we were able to show you some screens and get your immediate feedback, because it's the first time really that we've shown it to people.
What are you saying about staff, Tim?
Oh, so that's really exciting to hear your feedback and to hear that you guys are excited about it. We're really excited about it, but there's always like the low-key little inner editor voice in the back.
What if they hate it?
Yeah.
I was pretty sure you weren't going to hate the events setup, because as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, dang.
Back in my corporate days, we had a lot of that where, we'd look at something and we referred to as being inbred. We had been around it so long that we didn't realize that the masthead was spelled wrong.
Yeah.
So it's always really refreshing to show it to somebody and have them go, that's great, It
is, yeah, 100%. So as Sarah said, we're having another Friday hangout. No, we won't be presenting anything different, really. We just wanted to kind of give a spread of time zones for people who might not be able to make this specific time. So no, if you want to come, we'd love to talk to you guys there again, but also don't feel like you'll be missing out on other information. It'll be basically this.
I guess people might have different questions, which could steer things a slightly different direction, but our intentions are for a similar conversation.
Yeah.
I guess we could look and see if there's some secret screenshot that we didn't show them today that we can show them on Friday.
I think the last thing that I wanted to touch on really quickly before we end was just discourse, just because I know there's been a conversation in the ML forums about discourse. I just wanted to let you guys know just how we kind of maybe came up with why we wanted to go with discourse in general. So basically, last year when we were starting to explore the idea of a redesign, Heather and I had kind of a long conversation about what we need from our forums. And then after Heather and I had that conversation, I talked with Dave and Jez, our tech team, just about what their experiences have been maintaining the forums as they are. As many of y'all know, the forums in their current formation are totally custom to our website. We built them a long time ago, and then we've been using it to fit our needs. And I think some of you might also be aware that the development on our custom forums has been sporadic. So when I came on as program director, there was a laundry list of forum fixes that had just been around for years and years and years. And so we tried to get through kind of the top 10 or whatever of them a couple years ago. And so they work better now, but honestly, our tech team's so small. It's just Dave and Jez, and the development there are so many. They're trying to maintain the site with so many moving parts, and so the forums has consistently kind of just lost ground because they kind of work. They mostly work, and so but they've just been kind of stuck in the forums have been stuck in amber basically. And when I talked to Dave and Jez about do we want to kind of, there were a couple options on the table. One was basically let's create another version of the forums that's totally custom to us, and we'll build our own forum software again. Or we could go and look around for other tools that already exist. The reason we ended up deciding to go with other tools that already exist is because other forum software, the teams are dedicated to that forum software and they update it regularly, and they fix bugs regularly, and we just have to kind of press a button and update the forums to the newest version, and then all those bugs are fixed. And so in terms of just kind of looking back at our history with with our custom forums, and just how long bugs persist and how little development time Dave and Jez have been able to give to the forums, we just thought okay, if we want to continue to improve the forums experience in a regular way, it makes the most sense for us to move toward an out-of-box platform. So once we've made that decision, Heather and I basically went and looked at as a bunch of different forum software that's out there. And she created a really robust spreadsheet of just the different things that we need from forums, including moderator tools and stuff like that. And it's kind of shocking how like a lot of forums are really well featured for the user, but like the moderation tools are not as robust. And so given what Heather had kind of created, we narrowed it down to a couple of different platforms, Discourse, and then one called Threaded, and then another like, I forget what the third one was called. But the reason we ended up going with Discourse is because Discourse was the most robust features-wise. They had a really active community that developed for Discourse. They updated it really regularly, and it was on a stable release. A lot of the, like, I think two of the other two platforms were really cool, but they were still in beta. They weren't in a stable release, and Dave felt uncomfortable with that. So that's how we chose Discourse. I think it's definitely, like, for me, for sure, when I first looked at it, I was like, whoa, this looks so different from our usual forums. And the system is a little different. Like, it's more like tag based rather than kind of like big bucket category based. And so it's going to be a learning curve for sure. I'm hoping that, like, you know, if we launch in January, of course, the Discourse launch will also be pushed to January. And so hopefully you'll have a little bit more time to kind of get used to it, adjust to it, figure out what's working and what's not working. And then in terms of development, to be totally honest with all of y'all, because we're focusing so hard on kind of making the site really work, the focuses for Discourse development right now are integration. So basically like single sign-on. So if you are signed into the NaNoWriMo site and then you go to forums.nanowrimo.org, which is our Discourse instance, you'll be automatically logged in to the Discourse software. So you won't have to like log in multiple times back and forth. And then, of course, to integrate all of the user profile information so that you'll have your avatars, you'll have your halos, you'll have your progress bars, all of that integrated into Discourse as well. And then in terms of kind of like how it's actually going to look and feel, I know Heather's been working a lot. There's like, it's actually pretty customizable on the back end. And so through the tools that they provide. And so Heather's been playing around with how it looks, how it feels. And I think there's also the option for users to kind of set their own themes for it. So if it's purely like a visual look and feel thing, you can customize as you see fit. But yeah, that's kind of why we chose Discourse and kind of what's in the immediate pipeline for Discourse.
And just speaking to the questions here about regional forums and kind of their presence, because so much of the regional functionality and resources will be decoupled from the forums, in some ways, like somewhat counterinstinctively, people will be more engaged with their regions more easily. And then that will sort of funnel them more directly to the regional forum because they'll be going to that, you know, we saw that regional homepage. That's completely separate from the regional forum, but you can easily be directing people to that regional forum from that regional landing page. And because the site will all be so well integrated, you know, your homepage is going to have like, here's a region near you, here's what's coming up at the events in this region this week, like everything will be there. And so they'll be funneled so much more directly and constantly to the regional landing page that they'll be then integrated into that conversation, because from that regional landing page, you'll then be pointing people to the regional forum from there.
Yeah. We can definitely play around with just like how the regional forum links are featured on the region page and stuff like that. I mean, part of the reason we decided to go with that messaging space is just because we know that a lot of y'all are using things like Rimo chat and stuff to kind of really hack solutions to needs that y'all are seeing. So we're just trying to kind of make sure we're trying to pay attention as much as possible and see like what you guys are trying to use and what needs you're trying to meet. So yeah,
like that chat page or that chat section on the regional landing page, you could treat like your Chat Nano chat room if you wanted to. It obviously doesn't have some of the features that the external site has, but it does give you a place to just be like funneling people in the directions where things are going and just be more kind of directly in contact with the people in your region.
Cool. Okay. Thanks for sticking with us. We went a little over. If you have other questions.
I'm just going to drop the thread for questions into the chat here in case anybody thinks of something they forget to ask. So if you have further questions about the new site, you can drop them in that thread there, and I will either address them in the next Hangout on Friday or in an email that will be going out after that second Hangout.
Cool. Thanks so much for making the time to come and hang out with us and just ask your questions. I think, like, you know, every time we talk, like, I feel like so energized by your guys' passion for NaNoWriMo, like how excited you are. And it was really comforting both to see how excited you were about the redesign stuff, because it is really nice to get a fresh perspective. And also just to see how understanding y'all were about the possibility of a pushback on the timeline.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you everybody for coming. And I will be in touch on an ongoing basis. I'm glad that this was a useful opportunity for you all to kind of get a direct line on what's going on, because I know that like nothing is worse as an ML than feeling like you don't know what's going on. So hopefully this helps with that.
Whew.
Also, it was nice to talk to everybody.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.